for any founder, you have to feel that strongly about what you're doing, because it would be so easy in so many situations to say, this is too much.
Hey, thanks for being here. My name is Leah. In this podcast, you'll get a different take on the world of founders, startups, and innovation. I was a broadcaster for 23 years, not a business exec, so it was a leap to go from TV to VC. But since I've been in this sector, I'm repeatedly amazed by the founders who put everything on the line and just start a company from nothing. Why would they do this? In this podcast, we'll find out. Joining me in studio is Dr. Breanne Everett, founder and CEO of Orpyx, a digital therapeutics company whose flagship product, the Orpyx SI Sensory Insole, helps prevent diabetic foot ulcers in people living with diabetes. Breanne, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
This is so fun. So just a little background here for our listeners today. Breanne and I actually met when I was a health reporter, and she was just starting out with Orpyx. This is over a decade ago. It goes way back, doesn't it?
I know. It's
unbelievable.
very hard to believe.
It is, especially since you were just telling me that you guys had your 13th anniversary. Is that right?
Yesterday, yeah.
Wow, that's so exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you. Big 13.
Right? The big 1-3. So you're a plastic and reconstructive surgeon. But how did you become a founder? Let's go right back to that.
Yeah, well, my original intention was to be a surgeon. That was the career path that I thought I was on.
Right.
Had been interested in going into medicine and surgery from quite young. I think through high school, I remember knowing that I wanted to be a doctor, and had pursued my undergrad with that in mind as well. And then went on to complete my MD at the University of Calgary. And from there, started my residency in plastic and reconstructive surgery. And in the course of that residency training, ended up seeing, a whole host of medical conditions. In one in particular, I was really drawn to, which was this problem of diabetes and diabetes complication management.
Right. And
in the plastics world, this is something that I think a lot of people don't recognize, that plastic surgery is much more than what you see in the public sphere of what plastic surgery is. There's a lot of work that is done in the reconstructive area, in advanced wound care and other reconstructive procedures. And for that reason, we would be consulted to see patients who had been admitted with diabetic foot ulcers or wounds on their feet from diabetes. And we would be asked to provide maybe wound care advice or potential reconstructive options if that was an option. And so what was very clear in the course of that was that we had very few tools to actually help people who were in this situation. And it was something that was very common. So we would see many instances of this in a given day on call. And looking at the broader picture, I realized that a third of the direct cost of diabetes is actually for lower limb care. So on a system level, it's massive as well. And the problem that really underpins all of that is that most people with diabetes end up losing feeling in their feet. Mm-hmm. And then because they can't feel their feet, they can't protect their feet. And they'll basically wear holes in their foot like someone might wear a hole in the sock.
Wow.
So once you get to the point where you've developed a wound, then that wound can become quite extensive if you have poor blood flow into the area. So you get into this vicious cycle.
Right.
And most of the time when somebody does develop a wound, if they're lucky enough to get that wound to close, they'll get another one. Mm. So it just one problem begets the next, because we never actually address the reason why the patient had it, which is because they can't feel their feet.
Right.
So the problem at the end of the day is these wounds lead to further wounds and then amputation.
Yes.
And a loss of mobility, and in many cases a loss of life. So I was really interested in how can you take that problem and actually replace sensation in a different way to be more preventative, to stop those wounds from happening in the first place. This was just an idea because I was actually a surgical resident. It wasn't really, I did not think of it as a company at all. I became interested in just the concept of medical devices. And as residents, we were expected to do research projects every year.
Right.
So you'd typically always be involved in a research project. And so instead of a more traditional research project, I actually approached the residency research director at the time with the idea of actually pursuing medical device development and having that be my project. And he was very supportive of that, and actually started making introductions to people who either had been involved in medical device development or in development of businesses with consumer electronics, just given the concept that I had come up with. And one thing led to another. Actually, at the time, I think I thought business was a very bad thing. It was like the other side, right?
Yes.
And I got advice very early on that if I actually wanted to make a difference in patient care and actually changing the landscape of diabetes care, I had to think of this as a business. And it was a business, and it was something that should be set up as a business, funded as a business. The technology should be grown within a business, and that the university and academic side of things should be there for what it's very good for, which is supporting the testing, the research, the clinical trials related to the product, and create that division of where things happen.
Okay.
And then if I had tied myself to the grant cycle to actually fund the development of a device, it would take me 20 to 30 years to develop the device, and it would never see the light of day.
Whoa.
So that was hard. I kind of had to trust the people who had been there and done it before, because it was really a hard thing to wrap my head around. I just had this idea. I wanted to make something that would help people. But now all of a sudden I was faced with this decision to start a business. And so I did. I went ahead with it, and I thought initially that I would do it alongside my residency. And throughout that first year, realized that it was almost impossible to be a resident and run a business.
And why is that? Just the time, or?
Well, so a residency position is typically known to be 100 plus hours a week.
Wow. And
you're in the OR, you're busy all day long.
Yes.
And so the business world functions in those same hours. So if you're trying to further a business and communicate to lawyers, partners, employees, whoever, in those same hours, it's just not feasible. And so you've got two more than full-time jobs to do them properly. And I ended up being faced with the decision of having to commit to one or the other. And that was where this started.
Wow. So how did you make that decision? That seems a little bit crazy and scary to make that decision.
Yeah. Well, I think it was easier to make because I didn't realize how long it would take to build something significant.
Right.
And if the time horizon that you're thinking about in your head at that point in time is 2 years, then it feels like less of a leap to commit to that path, because you're just going to come back in a couple of years. It's not such a thing. So I hadn't had a background in business, so I thought, well, this would be perfect. I can do an MBA, take a leave, and over that period of time, build and exit the business in 2 years.
We laugh now because we know.
Now.
Yeah, we know now. Yeah.
At the time, I thought, well, that seems very, very doable.
But you almost need that thinking, don't you, to take the leap? You have to be a little bit naive.
Totally.
Right? Yeah. Otherwise, you wouldn't do it. It seems too overwhelming.
I know. And I would never, even in knowing what I know now, which is way more than when I started that, but still not enough. You're still always learning, right? But looking back, I wouldn't change the decision. I'm glad that I made the decision because of how little I knew.
How little you knew. I love it. So, in fact, the naivete worked for you. It allowed you to get this company off the ground.
It did. Yeah.
Okay, so now clearly you've been at this for, like I said, over a decade now. Yeah, 13 years. So tell me a little bit about how it has been going in terms of the mindset. This is what I'm curious about. So once you started to make that leap and move forward, how did that feel to you? Did you feel that this was something and it's going to be huge and massive?
I've always felt that about the business. I just think that back to the size of that problem. So if you look at the largest medical device market in the world, which is the US, and it's a global problem. So this is just one geography. There's $60 billion a year being spent on this problem. And to be coming from a clinical perspective where, I was able to see firsthand that we didn't have a good way to manage this, to make it more preventative, to make it more continuous, and to provide the supports that those patients needed. It just didn't exist. So to have something where you have an opportunity that's so large that it affects so many people, their quality of life, their mobility, if you execute right, you can really change the way that things are done. And I've always believed, and I feel that over the course of the company, I actually see it more and more over time, how huge the opportunity is there. That's never gone away. And that's something where that's always been a motivator, because you could start a business theoretically where maybe the market is dwindling or it's transient, or other competitors come in and take over the market in a significant way. Maybe very large companies do that, and you feel that the opportunity is sliding. It's never felt like that. It's always felt like the opportunity is there. It's growing. The world is evolving in a way to really pull technologies like this in. So that's been awesome to have that alongside the development of the business.
No kidding. So that motivation then, is that what keeps you going? When we know, you and I've talked about this many times, that being a founder is not a 9-to-5 job. It is incredibly demanding. Is that what keeps you going? Like, what keeps you going when times get very challenging?
I think about this all the time, because I think with anybody, your level of energy for a task that literally is, this is a marathon. Like it is an endurance sport, being in the space of startup and grow up company. It's not something that happens overnight. In our case, the business has many different aspects to it that we have to grow and scale and think about the future for. And you can't, like, there's just, I think, physically no way where you could come in every single day and be at your peak level of energy. You just can't. And as much excitement as I have about the business, like, it changes over time, like how much you feel like you physically have in you. And so it's really important to be able to manage that over time and be able to think about the ebbs and flows and really contextualize each day, because you always hear about, like, the high highs and the low lows of being a startup, in a startup. And when we're bringing in new employees, I try to communicate that to people. I try to be as clear about that as possible. And even at the stage that we're at, you would think that maybe that would be less. And it's not. There's still such high highs and such low lows. Like, I think I'm much better at managing the emotional state that surrounds those high highs and low lows. But when if you have a graph and that graph is kind of like beating up and down, and in the bigger picture, it's going from the bottom left to the upper right, every day you're in a peak or a trough, and you feel that peak or trough so deeply. And so being able to just, take a step back and realize that you are moving the needle. Maybe you don't move the needle super far in one day, but the needle is moving. And if you reflect back on where you were a quarter ago, a year ago, it's easy to remember that things are going in the right direction.
Right.
And you just have to stick with it. And, like, it's just that persistence that like, coming back day after day, like a training stimulus and endurance, where, like, just day after day, just keep committing to it. You'll get there. But it is a lot.
No kidding. Let's talk a little bit more about that. You said you've gotten better at managing the emotional state, the highs and lows of being a founder. How did you get there? How did you get better at it? What did you learn?
I mean, I think it's a number of things. So one thing is that I just give myself permission to not feel great about everything. Like, sometimes I just need to give myself some breathing room and just step aside, go for a walk, go for a drive, and realize that I've felt those low periods before, and I get over it and the business gets over it, and we've got a very strong team. We work towards solutions on everything that we do, but just giving myself the breathing room when I need it and giving myself the permission for it is something that I do. And like usually 24 hours later, I feel way better. But in the moment, it's hard to remember that you get out of it.
Right.
So that's one thing. I think the other thing is just realizing that you can only do everything that you can do.
Right.
Right. You can only, that's all you can do. You can strategize around it and you can put in everything that you have, but then you can't do more. You can't do more than what you could have done. And so there's a certain amount of I was actually meeting with a customer of ours a couple of days ago, and he said, you just have to remember, and this was just his philosophy on life, that you are a leaf blowing in the breeze.
Oh, that's lovely.
And like, that's just a really nice visual of like,
yeah,
yes, like it's just, just breathe.
Right.
Like there's a certain amount that you have to just basically move with the environment around you, and you can only do what you can do. So like these tactics are actually more mental than anything.
Right.
Just like being able to control your own psychological state. And then I think the other thing that I've realized is, you've got a whole team. That team continues to grow, and everybody is in that same kind of flow where some days are excellent for them, some days they really feel like they're achieving on their tasks, and some days are lower. And I think that it's like the collective that we can kind of lean on each other. So sometimes when you're not feeling your best, it's like you pass the baton, and
Yes.
together you can kind of move forward as a business. So I think like leaning on the team, and also just seeing how exceptional the people are around me, and appreciating that, and appreciating that this many people are dedicating their working lives and that mental capacity in their lives to the solving of this problem. And what a privilege and a position to be in, to have that. That's something that I continually reflect on, like how lucky
Right.
to have how lucky to even be in a position to feel those low lows, right?
Right. So this idea of gratitude, you're very
Exactly.
grateful for these people and what they're bringing to the team.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes. That all sounds very healthy and positive. But I would imagine it's not like that all the time. But you've had to learn that over the years.
You have to, because you have to do that, because it isn't all
Right.
positive. Like, you have to manage a lot, manage that mental weight a lot. And so it's just strategies of managing that.
Yeah. And then as the CEO, as the founder, essentially it comes down to you, right? And so you take that on. And as you mentioned, you've got your team. They're looking to you. They're having their own highs and lows.
Yeah.
And they're going to look to you. What do
Yeah.
I do with this feeling? What do I do with this day? What do I do with this problem? And that's an additional burden, I would say, or an opportunity.
It is. Well, it's both.
Yes.
Right? It is. But I think, and one thing that I do try to communicate within the team too is, I really do value. I'm going to call it a work-life balance. I don't really like. I think we have many identities, and I think valuing, putting energy into the different identities in your life, and making sure that I'm not just a CEO. So you have that ebb and flow of how things are going, but maybe like if you have other interests and hobbies and family and friends, and you're still working to build those things, then one thing kind of pulls up the other. So not having that single identity, and also just making sure that you're doing those things to fill up your cup in other ways.
Yes.
And making sure that the people at the company see and acknowledge that I value and prioritize that.
Yes.
I work very hard, but I play very hard too.
Yes.
So
That sounds like a good balance.
well, it's not, it's nuts in practice, but like it sounds good. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that sort of notion of balance, and I'm doing air quotes right now around the word balance, because I think that, that looks different for everybody, to be clear. But in the founder startup world, as we've discussed, it's not 9 to 5, and so I ask everybody that sits in the chair, how does it look to you to be a founder, and how does that impact your relationships, your family life? And I don't just ask the women, I ask everybody this question. How does it impact your family life?
I mean, it impacts like every aspect of your life. And I think that the things that I love and I focus on, you know, family, and when I talk about family, it's like our immediate family, and then we've got our extended family, mostly in Calgary as well. I think, sorry, now I forget the question.
Was the impact on family, right? And so what it means to be a founder and how that impacts your family life and your personal life.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like you have all of these identities running in parallel, and trying to find the balance between all of those things is something that changes every day. And I would say it's not predictable. And between my husband and myself, we're constantly balancing and juggling and trying to support one another and still be there for the kids and really prioritize everything that they need. But we're both very busy, and making sure that, you know, we're making sure that each of us has room to exercise and be physically healthy, and then also has the time and opportunity to be with the kids. And then we've got this family support system that is, you know, on any given day supporting in different ways, but it changes. And so for us, that balance is like almost a constant state of flux, trying to figure out what works, because maybe I hadn't planned it, but tomorrow I'm going on a trip for 3 days. Or, you know, maybe there's a new conference that's coming up that my husband's going to. So we balance it by just always being flexible with one another and trying to, you know, not limit each other, and know that we're making the right decisions for ourselves and our careers, and we're not questioning, well, do you really need to be doing that? Like, we just trust the decisions that we're each making and then support them in making those. But it does just mean that there's a lot of moving pieces all the time.
A lot of moving pieces, to say the least. Wow, that's amazing. The one thing that I have to ask you about, because we did have a pre-call, and you talked about Orpyx being your child. Why do you think of it that way?
Looking back at when I started the company, and this goes back to thinking it was going to be a shorter term thing than it was. And it's taken time to really appreciate that that's not what it is. It's like a thing that is growing and changing all the time, and that it requires a lot of attention and care and feeding and support and thought. It's not something that just runs on its own for what we're doing. Like, it's not there's so much creativity involved in every aspect of building and running the business, to the extent that I never appreciated that from the beginning, how much that was going to take. And I also never appreciated how much, when an investor invests in the company, they're investing in you, and they're trusting you to see that investment on and to grow it. So it's not something where you can just, you know, pass it on to somebody else. That responsibility and the care and I think the level of ownership that I feel for that is very strong. You know, similar to how you would feel that way about a child. Like, you feel very responsible and a lot of love for that child. Like, you would do anything for them.
Yes.
It's very similar in that way as a founder, where you just will do whatever you have to do to make it succeed. And you've got people that are trusting you to do that.
Yeah. Investors included. Yeah.
Totally.
Wow. What role does an investor play when it comes to the growth of this child, this Orpyx baby, if you will?
I mean, every investor is different.
Yeah.
So some investors come with networks that are very helpful to support the growth of the business. Other investors come with a lot of experience that can be applied from a guidance perspective on navigating path for the business. And then there's other investors where they're solely a financial investor in the company. They're not there to add specific value outside of that financial investment. So it's totally dependent on who the investor is.
Right. And I would imagine that some would be helpful when it comes to the mindset and the management of what it takes emotionally and, psychologically to be a founder.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, James Lockery is a great
popped into my
example
mind.
of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is super helpful to have. Just somebody who's been there, done that. They understand that how taxing emotionally running a startup can be, and having a very founder focused mindset from some investors is just super helpful to have that, because it can be a very lonely place.
Yeah. Lonely. That's hard, right? And is that lonely because you're the CEO or the founder? Is that why?
Yeah, you're at this if you think about like the network of people within a company, you're reporting up and out and managing down. Like there's just this network of people in different directions around you, but you're that kind of like that hub in the middle. And there's just a lot of responsibility in every direction there.
Yeah.
And so that's it's like we talked about, it's a privileged position to be in. It's a fantastic position to be in, but there's a lot that you're wearing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's why it takes such good management, and learning about yourself.
You constantly learn. Yeah.
Constantly learning.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The one thing that I ask every founder to think about beforehand is to think of a moment, because we all know every founder's had this moment. One of those moments, there's probably many moments, but let's talk about one moment for you as a founder when it was just really intense and really not necessarily scary and terrifying per se. Maybe it was, but that it was sort of a pivotal moment for you as a founder and how you sort of think about things and think of growing the company. Can you think of one of those moments?
I can think of several. One example would be, so early on, my oldest child is now 9. But before I had him, I was planning on taking some degree of a mat leave.
Some degree.
Knowing that, you can't just, shut off completely.
Right.
But there was a plan to be bringing in a president over that period of time. I was still responsible for managing the up and out, the investor base, potential partners. So that responsibility was never going away. And we had very little cash on hand. So the responsibility of actually fundraising and continuing through that period was a necessity. Like it wasn't an option to be just offline completely. And so I had everything mapped out with like, here's my delivery date.
Wow.
And there was a transition that was going to be happening prior to that delivery date. I think it was 2 weeks before I was due. I kind of put everything together to do that handover. And, life just happens sometimes. And we're 5 weeks before my due date. I was at the office. I had this sudden, strong urge to really clean my desk.
Oh.
And which was kind of odd, but I cleaned everything up. We had some visitors over that day. We had actually been partnering with the Human Performance Lab at the University of Calgary. That whole group had been in for presentations and tours. It was like business as usual. And then I ended up having a very precipitous labor and delivery that night. Had my son at 35 weeks.
Wow.
It happened really quickly. And so he, being 35 weeks gestation, he was admitted to the NICU. And I hadn't handed things over. I wasn't done with doing what I needed to do to even put a bit of a bow on that transition.
Wow.
And then had to raise money within weeks. So that was a lot. He was born at that point in time, and there were reasons why he was born early. The pregnancy was fine up until that point. It was totally not foreseen. But I don't think the stress of running a startup is helpful in keeping a child in for 40 weeks. So so I was in the NICU, the family room taking business calls when my son was like minus 5 weeks old.
Wow.
And so in some ways it was, I had, because he was born early and because you have the support of like amazing NICU staff here, it actually helped with that transition a little bit more. But that was a lot to navigate through. And like, again, like you can't, any other job, you'd be able to just sort of like drop what you were doing and be like, okay, it's happened early and I'm sorry, you're going to have to figure it out. There's no option for that in this situation. Like I couldn't just ignore my email completely. I couldn't keep taking calls because you've got the investors and the employees who are reliant on you for the business continuing in parallel. So all of that was just... we worked through it. I had tons of support from family, but it was just like, that was a lot.
Yeah. Like, I can't even, actually. I mean, I've had a kid in the NICU, too.
And you're making me cry.
I know. We're going to have a moment here, everyone. We're having a moment.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. How did you handle that? Like, how did you do it? Did you just take it hour by hour, minute by minute?
Yeah.
We are getting emotional here.
It is, because it's like... I mean, it's this incredibly emotional point in your life where you're like, I was like a mom for the first time. And, sorry.
No, that's okay. Hey, this is a safe space.
But yeah, it really, it's really a point in time where you have to think about your priorities and what's important. And it was super important to me to continue to make sure that I was being there for the business. And kind of doing my best to balance those things.
Wow. That's incredible. What commitment, really. Commitment to the commitment you made to Orpyx and commitment that you made to your son. It's incredible. It's incredible. I'm going to make you cry more. But I think what this shows is that this is a different journey, to your point. Mm-hmm. This is a different journey than just saying, okay, I'm done now. Baby came early. See you guys. Good luck. Yeah. This is not that.
No.
And I think this is what people need to understand, I think. And this is certainly, for me, that's why this is called, why would you do this, right? Like, because it seems so, it just seems wild to me. It just seems incredible to me that people are doing what they're doing and that they believe so deeply in it. You talked just a moment ago about you were so deeply committed, you had to prioritize, like, how committed am I to this company and what I'm trying to solve here? How did you get to that level of commitment?
I mean, it's just been a combination of things. Like, once I had decided that I was doing it, I was doing it. And once you take that first dollar from an investor, you're doing it. And once you hire your first employee, you're like, all of those things are just recommitments to what you're doing. And then you get faced with those challenging moments, and they're very, very much a test of how committed are you to this. Yeah. And that's why for any founder, you have to feel that strongly about what you're doing, because it would be so easy in so many situations to say, this is too much. Like, it takes its toll on many aspects of your life, and you can't have the level of focus in other areas that you could if you didn't have that level of responsibility. So you have to feel that strongly about it. Otherwise, it's not possible. I don't think it's possible.
You throw in the towel. Yeah.
It's just what you would.
Why would you?
Why would you not?
Exactly. So let's talk a little bit about that. So you've got this incredible company. Orpyx is growing rapidly. You've talked about fundraising many times, but let's dig into that a little bit, because for a lot of founders, particularly the founder, this is what you spend your time doing. A lot of it is just getting that capital in the door so that you can keep growing. How hard is that? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, it's very hard. And it over the course of running the company, it's just been hard in different ways. Mm-hmm. So early on is very hard because I've literally never raised money before.
Right.
And I felt so guilty about taking a check from somebody. Like, that is a really difficult thing to do if you've never done it. And I've like, my whole life, I've been very focused on being self-sufficient. Like, even as a kid.
Right.
And not wanting to ask for money thing. Like, I wanted to figure out ways to make my own money and do my own. So the asking for investments and receiving checks. Very difficult to get used to that situation. And it's taking time to realize that this is an opportunity for those investors too.
Yes.
So I had to stop thinking of it in that way. Like, I'm providing them with an opportunity to be part of this amazing growth story.
Right.
And we can be in it together. And that's a great thing. So I don't have that issue as I did earlier on because, we've built something more significant now. We weren't, in a shoebox with no windows and no product. But there's more there now. It's more challenging now because the quantum of investment that we're looking to achieve is a lot higher. So you're starting to look at a smaller pool of investors that have the pockets that are deep enough to do that have the networks that make sense to the company, that are strategically aligned as partners in some way for the business going forward. So you narrow the pool in certain ways, and then the decision of one investor is therefore that much more meaningful because you're not talking about a series of $5,000 investments. You're talking about multiple $1 million investments. Right. So the other thing that over that time that is still hard, but I have gotten way more used to it over time, is the rejection that you face through the financing process.
For sure. Over and over again.
Because you're going to get lots of no's. Yeah. You get lots of no's.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's it's nothing other than this is not a fit with what the fund is focused on doing.
Right.
And it's nothing personal. It has nothing to do with how you've built the business or executed. It's literally just not a business fit. Even in that situation, a no is still kind of devastating.
Yeah.
It's obviously more devastating if a no is because they think you've done something that is not how they would have grown the business.
Right.
That's typically not what we're seeing. It's more like a mismatch.
Right.
But that, going through that entire investment process of building a funnel, working investors through the process and getting to decisions, hopefully as quickly as possible. But they're not all going to say yes. You're going to end up with a syndicate of a subset of investors. And to get to that point, you had to go through a lot of no's.
Right.
And I think when we did the Series A, I had a spreadsheet that was actually calculating the number. It was 213 no's. And so that is something that you have to get used to. Never gets easy. It's another endurance game. But again, finding those things that help to offset that over the course of that process, because it's
not
easy.
A thing. It's a thing. It's not easy. Wow. This I hear this from you, that you got to just keep going and stay focused on what it is, the problem you're trying to solve, but there's a resilience in that I hear you've built up over time. This resilience to the no's, this resilience to the impact on your life, this resilience to just, this isn't going to be over in 2 years or 2 minutes. This is going to be an endurance test.
Yes.
How important is it to be resilient?
I think extremely important. I know Brian Fileski once referred to the tenacity and grit of being a founder, and those two words I think are really, they're just accurate. It does take that tenaciousness and that grit and that resiliency to just kind of, almost like this it's like you're a swamp monster. And you keep getting knocked down, but you keep coming back out of the swamp. You're like, not today. Sometimes I imagine myself as that swamp monster. I'm like, nope, I'm going to keep going. It doesn't matter how many things get thrown my way. And you just got to get used to being okay with, you get knocked down, you get back up again.
Right. Wow, but that's really hard.
Like a Chumbawamba song.
I think it is, isn't it? Same generation. Yeah, I know the song you're talking about. But that is very hard. It is very hard to stay resilient. And you've talked a little bit about how you manage that. Is there a little bit of advice that you would give to founders that might just be starting out or just getting used to the idea, or maybe even just thinking, is this something I want to do? Sounds a bit wild.
Yeah, I think if you're really overwhelmed with concern of is it the right thing, it's probably not the right thing.
Right. I'm reminded of that when people that were going to go to Hollywood, it's like you have to make sure that there's nothing else you could do. If there's nothing else you could do and it had to be this, then you're good. You're good to go. Similar sort of idea?
I think I actually could have been happy doing a bunch of different things.
Right.
Like, I would have been very happy being a surgeon.
Right.
I don't regret the decision at all, but I could have been very happy. And I think wherever I committed to with my career, I think I would have been quite happy.
Then why did you do this?
I don't know why. It's just like the opportunity for impact is so high. And like, that's just such a rewarding place to be. Mm-hmm. Like, that potential reward, and thinking about, you're going to leave a mark in some way. What's it going to be? Yeah. And if you have to make, everyone makes decisions about where they're going to be spending their time. And in this case, I felt that the amount of energy that I was putting in could have this exponential impact on where that could lead to in terms of care for people. That maybe isn't the same if I look at what I personally felt like I could do from the clinical perspective. I felt that given everything that I knew, there was obviously the opportunity for success or failure, many branches along the way leading to potential failure. But if you can succeed, being able to have that impact is very rewarding. Yeah. And that's the thing.
That's the thing that keeps you going. Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit more about impact then. You and I talk about impact all the time because it's important to us here at Thin Air Labs too. But let's talk about it specifically when it comes to Orpyx. So what kind of impact is Orpyx going to have in the world?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think it's really easy to see that in that even with fewer patients than where we're expecting to be in the future, we see it every day. Yeah. So now that we have a commercial product, it's supported by remote patient monitoring. It's a turnkey solution. It's growing and scaling in the real world. We get testimonials from patients and providers every single day. And knowing that we've been able to intervene and stop a wound from happening, prevent somebody from requiring amputation, making somebody feel like they've never been cared for in the way that they are being cared for with the product. Like, those things they're individuals that are being affected, because even at the scale that we're expecting this to be to, that scale is made up of all of these individual stories and narratives. So it's really easy to draw a line from where we're at to just more amazing stories. Right. And it's very motivating to the whole team. Doesn't matter if you're on the production line, in the R&D team, on the remote monitoring team, in customer care, wherever somebody sits within the company, they have this direct impact on somebody's livelihood, their health span, their mobility. It's a very motivating place to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's the nice thing about running a business like this, is it just benefits everybody involved, and it's a really easy place to build. You're not, I don't know. I bought a very stupid thing the other day off the internet that looked like a good idea, which ended up, it was like I don't know if you've had these advertised to you, but it's a cup that has like a cereal holder in it and then a milk holder. And then you don't make your milk, you drink your cereal on the go. It looked like it was going to be something great. It is a total piece of junk, and it doesn't work at all. And you just pour milk and cereal at the same time all over your face.
Oh, no.
And so I realized, I'm like, this business, I'm pretty sure that they know that this product doesn't work, because I don't even know how you could get it to work. But they've created these molds and they've built a bunch of these cups, and it's probably like a short-term one-trick pony. Sell a bunch of them, put a bunch of AdWords in, have a big social media spend, make a bunch of money, and then close down the doors because the product doesn't work. And I just think and it's a stupid piece of plastic, but I was thinking, how would you get your employees to be okay with working at this company? There's way worse things you could do in a business than sell a terrible plastic cup. But it did make me reflect on, how we've got this opportunity to really motivate people with a really cool, amazing thing that impacts their lives. Not every business is like that.
No kidding. Have we actually talked about what it actually is, this first product? Like, what? Let's give you the opportunity to talk about that here before we wrap this up. Tell us exactly what it is all about.
Yeah. So we make a sensorized insole that just fits inside the shoe like any other insole. You cannot perceive that it's in there. And it's filled with a suite of many sensors, so pressure sensors, temperature sensors, and then movement sensors. And it goes into the shoe and basically silently measures and monitors under the foot for where there's pressure over time, where a wound might be developing, and we pick that up by heat, or how much activity somebody's doing. All of the data from that device goes to an app, a companion app, where the patient is actually provided with activity-based feedback to change what they're doing to prevent wounds, so they can actually modify activity to stop a wound from happening. And then ultimately, all of that data goes to our cloud-based backend, where we have a credentialed team of nurses that monitor that data on an ongoing basis and provide supportive digital and remote care to the patients in the system. So the way that I like to think of it, so it's a turnkey solution for foot management and preventative foot management. And we're really filling in that space between traditional visits in an office, so with a podiatrist or with a primary care professional, where normally, historically, you would see a clinician and then you would go a period of time, 6, maybe 12 months before you see them again. And we're really trying to bridge that care and bring care to the home in a preventative way to fill in that space in between, where care becomes continuous, remote, in place where somebody lives, and we can ultimately prevent those costly occurrences, usage of acute care, and then, leading to loss of mobility from happening by just being that bridge.
Wow, that's incredible. It is easy to see the impact that you're going to have on these patients.
Yeah, that's why we do it every day. That really is.
Absolutely. Okay, so as we wrap things up here, when you think down the road, how do you hope Orpyx's story goes?
I think it's really building on what we've built so far. So at this point, we're just at the beginning of the level of impact that I think we will have with this. So we're very focused on growing different channels to get the product out to the patients in need, and just continuing to focus on growth of all of those segments and creating more reach and hopefully getting to a point where this is just considered standard of care. Wow. So that's where we're going.
I love it, and I look forward to it. Breanne, thank you so much for this conversation.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's fantastic to see you again.
Innovative ideas are just that, ideas, until they have the right kind of backing to make them a reality. Enter the Opportunity Calgary Investment Fund. Established by the City of Calgary to attract investment, drive innovation, and stimulate economic development, it gives innovators the launchpad they need to take flight. After all, there's a reason Opportunity is in its name. By supporting public and private organizations that help grow Calgary's economy, it's creating opportunities for everyone to reach new heights. Find out more at opportunitycalgary.com.